Jalen Green and the rest of the Houston Rockets are my dark horses for a playoff place in the 2023-2024 NBA season. I know they were pretty bad last season. I get it, but you have to look at the off-season moves they've made across the season and the development of their talent. First, they've taken in Dillon Brooks. Dillon Brooks gives them some amazing perimeter defense and gives them that grit that they need. People always say that the Houston Rockets haven't got a culture. I'm not gonna lie, they haven't really got a culture. But you bring in a player like Dillon Brooks, you bring in a player like Fred VanVleet, who's won an NBA championship, and you can effectively build your culture off of that. You bring in a coach like Ime Udoka, a player that knows how to create a system, a winning system, and effectively, you might have a culture on your hands. Just look at the problems that they've solved across their NBA campaign last season. So effectively, looking at last season, they were, as you can see, the worst team for three-point shooting in the league. The worst team. 32.7%. That's really, really bad. But you have to look at it like, obviously you have Jalen Green. Jalen Green's getting stuck with shots that he wouldn't really take, or anyone else wouldn't really take. Really, really tough shots, just because the rest of the players aren't really good enough. Now you're adding in a player like Fred VanVleet, a player who has pretty much, Fred VanVleet can only really shoot threes. His mid-range shooting isn't great. Inside the paint, he's not amazing. He can only really shoot threes. So Fred VanVleet gives them another option to shoot from, and thus takes the pressure, three-point shooting wise, off of a player like Jalen Green. And obviously the Jabari Smith Jr. coming into his second year will develop even more with his three-point shot. So you end up with even better players on the three-point perimeter, and thus even better quality shots for each player. You end up seeing that the Houston Rockets will go up in their three-point shooting next season. As you can see here, they have the third highest opponent points per game in the league last season. And like we said, we're adding in a player like Dillon Brooks that gives them some defensive stability. You're adding in a player like Amen Thompson as well, a player that gives them more stability. Also, I didn't mention for the three-point shooting, Cam Whitmore effectively will help that a lot because he's a really good three-point shooter. Might even be a 40% three-point shooter in his career. So you end up with players better defensively and three-point shooting wise, as the stats show. Lastly, it's really the development of their players that will push them to the moon. No one's looking for any real development of a Fred VanVleet. I think he was just there to help them reach the salary floor because they have a bunch of rookies and people on the rookie deals. So they need salary to fill up. Same thing with Dillon Brooks. They need to pay people. To reach that 90% of the salary cap that you have to in the NBA, they just signed Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks. You know what you're going to get with Dillon Brooks. And no one's going to really expect a significant amount out of Fred VanVleet. But the jump we're looking for is Jalen Green. Jalen Green could have a mammoth season next season, and I'm calling it. We've seen him training in the offseason with Kevin Durant. We've seen him training in the offseason with Kyle Kuzma. Some high quality players there. He's probably going to train in the offseason with Paul George, you know. That Fresno connection there. So effectively, I expect to see a new and improved Jalen Green, a player who isn't just chucking up shots, but a player who's able to effectively pick his shot when he wants to shoot. A player that's effectively going to have a much better playmaking season as well, because I feel like Jalen Green could be an elite playmaker, especially off of a double. So effectively, I think we're going to see a real improvement from Jalen Green. I think Jabari Smith Jr. has shown in Summer League that he's much better than he showed in the beginning of last season. In the end of last season, he was okay. And I feel like he can really take a new step, especially three-point shooting. Defensively, he showed he could be a real monster. And if he can really prove that defensive capabilities next season, he can really help push forward the Houston Rockets defensively. And finally, their rookies, Cam Whitmore and Amen Thompson, are two of the best players in this draft. I think they have had the best draft out of anybody else in the league. Cam Whitmore should have been a top 10 pick, should have been a top 7 pick really. Should have been picked by the Magic really. Amen Thompson obviously was the third overall pick. Amen Thompson gives you great defense, gives you great playmaking ability, gives you great finishing under the rim, which is something that they haven't really had in terms of scoring. They haven't had a player that can really finish under the rim other than Jalen Green. Jalen Green's shooting percentage under the rim isn't even great. So that leaves them with a starting five. Or I would probably at the beginning of the season start Fred VanVleet and try to transition into Amen Thompson. So Fred VanVleet at the 1, Jalen Green at the 2, Tyree Eason at the 3, Jabari Smith Jr. at the 4, and Alperen Sengun at the 5, leaving Amen Thompson and Cam Whitmore to come off the bench. That is a really good team. A really good 7-man rotation. Obviously adding in more and more players, whichever other players they have in their team. That's a really good 7-man rotation. So I think the Houston Rockets are your dark horses. I think we're going to really be surprised by just how good they are and the jump that we see from Jalen Green. But anyways, make sure you subscribe. I'll see you, man, in a bit. Boom.